right, hello everyone. It is me again, Kat Alicia, here to run another interview with one of our lovely cast members from Hamlet from Shakespeare. And today we have Jett Barker here with us. You want to say hello, Jett?
Yes, hello. I'm Jet. I'm super jazzed to just talk about doing Shakespeare over the internet.
I know, right? It's a good time. Um, you are actually one of, you're the first person I'm interviewing who played not just one part, not just two parts. You played three roles in this lovely
Yeah,
show.
yeah,
We had First Clown, Marcellus, and Player King. That's a lot.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd say for Marcellus and the first clown, first gravedigger, that was fine because I knew it was coming. For
Yeah.
the player king, it was, hey, you have 72 hours to prep for this, and by the way, it's in verse, and the rhymes don't work unless you do it in original pronunciation, which you don't know how to do. So
So good luck, baby. Um, so out of the wait, so I'm sorry, was it three or four? Did I miss? Was there also another one? It
No,
was
no, no.
Gravedigger?
Uh, Three, because the first clown is the gravedigger.
Oh, is
They,
the
yeah,
Gravedigger.
they're one and the same. The names are just used interchangeably.
I know what I'm talking about, everybody. It's okay.
It's fine.
Uh,
No, it is confusing because you have some people who only refer to them one way and some people who refer to them using both, and it's like, is that also the yeah.
Interchangeable? What's happening?
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot, but I'm actually here to do exactly that. Is there one of the three that you liked more or felt was like easiest for you to channel, or maybe you liked one more because it was harder, like of a challenge, which obviously you just said Player King was
Yeah.
pretty intense.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I really liked because I mean, Hamlet being a tragedy and also just Hamlet being Hamlet, there's not really that much opportunity for banter and general shenanigans.
Hmm.
But when you're digging graves with your buddy and you're essentially telling riddles that are actually jokes to each other the entire time, it's like that's pretty fun.
Yeah.
So I appreciated digging some graves.
All right. Well, like it's like you said, it's hard to crack jokes in a show like Hamlet. It's what felt nice about getting to be Guildenstern alongside Sarah for the
Yeah.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern vibes. Just our silly little guys. You got to have some to counter some of that tragedy. And you're right. Why not crack some jokes while digging graves? um, so you said that Player King was probably the most challenging one for yourself, yeah?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd say a lot of that just came down to uh the fact that it was very much, oh, we need to fill this slot. Can you fill this
Hmm.
slot? So a lot of it I think was logistical. And then the fact that when you're dealing with uh verse in Shakespeare, you can go one of two ways. And the first way is to not obey the original set, which breaks the
Hmm.
rhymes. And for shows like Midsummer, because I also did a Midsummer Night's Dream with Shakespeare, um, everybody made the collective decision that we're going to allow ourselves to break these rhymes. That's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like eyes and archeries, right? Those don't
Mm.
rhyme in modern English. Uh, but eyes and archeries do rhyme in original pronunciation. I have to kind of do math in my head to
Oh,
let
yeah,
everyone remember it.
absolutely.
But and the other thing too is that it just changes the overall prosody of how things sound. Because if it's out, out, brief candle, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player who struts and frets upon the stage. His hour upon the stage, rather. Come on now, I know the Scottish play, it's fine. Uh, Out, out, brief candle, life's but a walk in shadow. A poor player who struts and freights his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It's punchier in original pronunciation. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's not necessarily that one is better than the other, they're just different. But especially because the player king is contained within a very small portion of the play as a whole, I went, well, if we're gonna actually have this in verse,
Mm-hmm.
we can get away with having it preserve all of the rhymes.
Oh,
But
well,
no, yeah, I mean, if I had better access to resources, that would be one of the things where it's like, if ever I should happen to get over to England again, or if ever the like three people who reliably teach it at the Globe, they occasionally end up over here, but I'm just like, I don't know if you all teach classes. Can you just like fix my brain a little bit on this?
hello. Yeah, Mr. William had an interesting way of writing out those words.
Billy.
And they can be a little bit of a tongue twister. And listen, 72 hours, Jet, you still nailed that 110%. And I know so many people who would say the exact same thing. So, yeah, that's right. Take it. Take the compliment. It's coming at you. You have no choice. You gave us a little bit of a little taste there of your voice acting abilities and the way you're able to shift accents and the flow of how you present these words. Did as a voice actor, how so I'm like, how am I trying to word this? Did you have a similar or different experience when you were finding the three different voices?
So I mean, fundamentally, I'm the type of person where I decided that I wanted to go into voice acting professionally, and then I hoarded theater training for a ridiculously long time because I went, acting is
Mm-hmm.
acting is acting. So fundamentally, the way that I do characterization work is pretty much identical regardless of medium. It's just how that presents in the final product is different
Yeah.
depending on what it is. So I mean, for digging graves and being silly, I was like, well, I can reasonably just do this in my code switch because it actually preserves some more of the original phonemes. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and also, I don't know. I just think the cadence works well for that kind of banter. Um, and then for the others, it was very much just what makes sense contextually based on where we are in space and how we're relating to everybody else around us.
Yeah.
So I mean, the answer is kind of boring, which is just I mean you kind of do the style of, it's not even really character analysis so much as where do you sit energetically, how does the imaginary body present, and then that informs the voice print. But that's just my own workflow as a, well, Chekhov, Alexander Adler creature.
What a smorgasbord there. Love. uh, Something I've talked about with in the other couple interviews we've done is taking theater and putting it online and through something like Zoom or whatever it may be. It's such a different experience. For a lot of people, they've only done theater on stage. But again, like as a voice actor and someone who's done theater, how how was that for you as an experience to channel like that physical acting and putting it into just the voice? And I guess for asking you this question is almost a little, I don't know if it's a simpler answer or not because of how long you've been a voice actor. Did you find yourself finding that physicality still while my gosh, you're just sitting there in that box heating up and still, again, absolutely killing it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, well, so again, kind of harkening back to that, acting is acting is acting. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of so a lot of my uh sort of process, weirdly, is physical theater driven because that was what finally allowed for the connection between, oh, my brain and my body are fully talking to each other again. Nice! Because when you become disabled relatively early in life, your
Yes.
brain goes, oh, your body doesn't work. So we shouldn't act on impulse anymore because that's not safe. So then it's how do we untrain that reflex but still keep ourselves reasonably safe whilst also letting another person drive our nervous system. Um,
Mm,
so it's a lot of this whilst everything around you is exploding into confetti and fire. But the phenomenon of how do we translate theater into both just vocal performance and then into the online format. It's if we
hmm.
think about acting as a 12-layer dip in
Oh,
just the
heck yeah.
vocal in just the vocal performance, we might only get the first 4 layers. The other layers are still there, they just aren't necessarily detectable. But if you are working with all 12 layers, those first 4 layers that are detectable to a listener, to a viewer,
Hmm.
um, will be clearer and more apparent if it's backed by everything else. Similarly, doing theater in an online format versus offline, it's very, very odd because it is, I would argue, 2.5 times harder to do the
Hmm.
regular energetic exchange that you would have from a proprioceptive standpoint over the internet. I have met 2 people who have been able to teach physical theater uh, remotely, but only 2. One is Patrick Russell up in the Bay Area, who I think has gone back to all in-person stuff again, and then the other is Aaron Fitzgerald, who still does remote stuff. And it's so interesting because there is a way to do that energetic exchange, and it's nice when it can still happen. Um, but it's, to me, in some ways, it's a little more shallow when you're doing true theater. Like, we're doing theater, but it's online. In
Yeah.
some ways, actually, if you're in a it's very rare that you're in a live session with other people doing a group record. But in
Hmm.
some ways, because that is all vocal performance, I've found that paradoxically, sometimes that connection can run a little bit stronger just because you aren't trying to do theater in a format that doesn't necessarily accommodate theater super well.
Mm. Oh, brilliant. Um, okay, you've talked a little bit about other Shakespeare shows that you've done. Um, have you already landed that dream character you want to perform, or is there, oh, look at that smile. Look at that smile. Look at it, look at it, look at it. What is the dream character?
So I mean I'm a Shakespeare nerd. There are
I
a
love it.
smattering where I look at them and I go, I would I would like to play you, but not yet. Or I
Okay.
would um like there's the one that I think of that would be tricky for me to swing now, ironically, um because because my spine is fused. Uh
Ugh.
so well okay, so I joke that I was unquasimodoed. But
Oh,
I
that's a Jet. That's such a good joke.
and so I was unquasimodoed, but I have a weird sentimental attachment to Quasimodo, and for as problematic as he is to Richard III, and I mean IRL Richard III, markedly less of a mess of a human
Yeah.
being. He was just kind of a guy. Um who like fought in armor on horseback with having kyphoscoliosis. I'm like, I'm sorry,
How?
but good for you. Um, mostly I'm sorry, but
Yeah,
anyway.
mostly sorry.
They found you whilst trying to build a car park, a parking lot. Well done. Anyway, that's niche England lore. But the so I would love to play Richard III someday, but that would have to be after the pandemic has actually fully cooled down, because
Yeah.
I feel like I could only do it in person. And actually, a lot of that is because of safety tools, because it is much much easier to parse for the people around you. Like, hey, has something shifted? Is that your brain, or is that the character's brain? Like,
Yeah.
what does the character feel like versus what do you feel like? You don't get that in this format, really. Um, and so, as somebody who does Imperious and Scary a lot for work, it's like I want to make sure that you're okay before, during, and after. So make sure that you, IRL you, is not taking any of this whilst
Mm-hmm.
we're working, and that after we have the support structures that we need to go, okay, we good? Like, you want to hang out and talk about nonsense? And so I think that's something that would need to be done in person. And
Yeah.
I'm too young for Lear. I'm too
Oh,
young for
okay.
Lear. Um,
Okay.
but I would also within King Lear, Tom is very good. I was very fortunate that uh I got to be the Scottish King and I got to be Puck.
Yeah. Oh,
And
Puck.
now I've been Oberon. And no, it's funny because Oberon and Theseus were on the same track, and one day I made Theseus Russian as a bit, and everybody went, "Can you keep making Theseus Russian?" And I went, "Okay." so
If
he,
you say so.
so he's arbitrarily very Russian. Doing Shakespeare in a Slavic phonetic set is not necessarily more difficult, but it is deeply weird to like stumble through it the first time. Um,
I was about to say, I feel like it depends on who you are because for me, that sounds so difficult. That sounds like really, really working the nuts and bolts there. Like,
yeah, I mean, I'd say the thing that benefits me is that the Slavic phonetic set, like, I don't have it listed on my resume as something that I can do at integrated proficiency because it's
mhm.
not from anywhere. It's just an amalgamation of like various miscellaneous Slavic noises. So it's like it doesn't belong to any one country. Like anybody from there would hear it and go, "What is that? What is wrong with you?" Uh, but like it's my default. I'm speaking nonsense to my cat maneuver.
Oh,
Um,
oh yes. Oh, I know that. Yep. There are so many people who just understood so deeply. I think we all have that special little voice we talk to our animals in.
Yeah, apparently, I learned recently that one of my friends, because they popped up in a video game and they were French in the video game, and another one of my friends, who's best friends with the friend who was French, didn't recognize the French, not actually French, friend, because he'd never heard them be French. But this friend who was French is French all the time because that is what their dog's internal monologue sounds like.
Perfect. That is phenomenal. I love actors. That's so wonderful. I just recently did a very terrible French accent for an episode of a web series. I was told it did not have to be perfect. They were like, the worse it is, the better. And I was like, thank goodness, because I've never worked on a French accent. So
I
that
mean,
one is
yeah,
that
on
one's
it.
hard to find.
Yeah, I mean, because the other thing for me too is that like there's a very thin distinction between like being vaguely German and then being very, very French. And like I love the uvula trill, and I don't know why. But for me, because the consonant devoicing, especially on th, it's
Mhm.
not identical between the two, but it's similar enough. And I haven't needed to use either of them for work purposes for a long time, so both of them are very dodgy right now. But they're similar enough that I can only really keep one at any given
Mhm.
time. And so most recently, I had to be French and evil for work, so I kept that around. But now I'm just like,
French and evil.
well, now I guess I better kind of kick the other one back into working a little bit. So now it's just both of them are like not workable, but they're okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of parallel to one another.
Yeah.
Maybe getting unquasimodoed like your spine. I don't know.
Let's just delineate these fully. No.
um,
Move, dang it. No. Um,
I I love getting to hear you talk about safety tools, and safety tools are very important, whether you're in theater or maybe doing an actual play or playing a game with friends. Um, and safety tools can be a little more difficult over a video call. Um, but with acting and with theater, we can be so big, we can be super intense, and you do want to check in. Um, and I'm kind of using this as a transition into have you ever directed? Have you ever done anything along those lines?
so, yes, with an asterisk. So
Okay.
generally, I have formal directorial training. I've been told that I am reasonably good at it, but it's not something that I do very often.
Okay.
For a couple of different reasons. One is that it requires a lot of bandwidth to be the one driving the car that is a project, and
Mm-hmm.
that is bandwidth that I cannot always swing. And so, especially because directing is a sphere that I don't have as much experience in,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have as much of a reference for how can I use my resources most effectively here. I will say that the other thing about my directorial style is that I am very wont to use metaphor in ways that like I understand may not necessarily work for everybody. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
so we're going to approach this next beat like a sandwich where both the top and the bottom of the sandwich is I want to support and uplift you and be welcoming and provide you with this information. And the center of the sandwich is I hate myself so, so much. And so like and it's the other thing too is that it depends so heavily on the context of the project that you're working on. Like as a
Mm-hmm.
director, if I had all the time and resources in the world, I would love to be fully collaborative with people and go, why are you, meaning you as character,
Mm-hmm.
feeling this way? Why is this presenting this way? And I mean, my philosophy is as long as you have an answer, that's the right answer. Sweet. Um,
Yeah.
and uh, and but frankly, we don't always have that kind of time. And so, the last time I really did direction work, well, aside from like mock sessions and things like that, and people going,
Yeah.
I haven't done this in a really long time. I know that you won't eat my face like that. The last
Help me,
time,
please.
yeah, the last time I did directing was for a game jam project where I agreed that I would write like a section of the game, and it ended up being I think close to 12,000 words. With the caveat that if I did the writing component, that I would also do voice direction for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the character that I wrote, because it's ostensibly like sort of a visual novel, but the character that I wrote, I had an idea in mind of I have a friend who I think would absolutely smash this.
Mm-hmm.
And also I understand that not only is he easily directable, but he will work with my slightly weird direction. And
Perfect.
so that was what we did. But because of the fact that it was like, okay, we have 140 lines of dialogue that we need to get through in like
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 sessions or whatever, it's like we don't necessarily, and they weren't like 4 hour sessions or anything. It's we don't necessarily have the time to go and do this super duper deep um, character exploration. But all in all, I think, especially because it was just that one person, we could still get to a reasonable level of depth and just sort of mesh with each other really well. So, I mean, directing is something that I can do and will do situationally, but it's
Got
very
it.
heavily a case by case thing just because there are a lot of logistical constraints and shenanigans involved with it. And also, right now, like, I'm not working on any. I'm not working on
Yeah.
any video games unless they're under an interim agreement, and that goes
Hey,
for
guess what?
directing work too.
Pay your people and stop using AI. Thanks.
Yeah, please,
Please, please.
please.
Um, okay, to keep this one without thinking too hard about it, quick and short, let's say everything lined up. You have all the money, the time, the space, the people, everything. What's your dream Shakespeare play to direct?
Ooh,
What came to mind right away?
The Tempest or Cymbeline?
Ooh, The Tempest would be a good one.
Yeah, The Tempest. The Tempest is fun. I've done The Tempest before. It
Heck
was
yeah.
yeah, it was funny because I did The Tempest right at the end of high school, and then when I went to uni, my advisor for my theater major, who was also the head of my teeny tiny theater department, uh, he actually wasn't at orientation or the first 2 weeks of class because he was finishing up a run as Prospero in another state. So
Busy,
he
busy.
yeah, he came back and we could basically trade Tempest stories, which was very fun.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean that one, it's like all Shakespeare where you do kind of have to look at it and sort of interrogate it a little bit and go, okay, like
Mm,
how do we need to finagle this in ways that feel, for lack of a better word, fair and equitable to
yeah,
everybody involved. Um,
definitely.
but once you kind of get over that initial hill, it's a fun little tragic comedy.
Yeah, we love. Okay, I'm going to move into a couple questions that we had sent in to us. And we had one from Kalaki underscore Redbeard who sent this question for everybody. What did you find that surprised you about the amazing performances of the other cast members?
um, it was funny because especially now that I've worked with Elsie more,
Mm,
um, I think I've very much acclimated, but especially just given the fact that like the environment in which they're working isn't necessarily like the most static and stable, you know, because life happens. That's what happens
yeah.
when you cohabitate with people. But the
Woohoo!
level of adaptivity and yet using their energy in ways that are so focused and precise, despite sometimes needing to finagle, I
Yeah,
think was really admirable. Because it's very easy to go, oh, stuff's changing. And then it's hard because you're having to jump back and forth between this is what's happening in my actual life. Oh, I need to be this other person who's in this completely different state now. Um,
yeah.
Jen, of course, is brilliant. Uh,
So good.
and I mean, I think from the conversations that we would have, even just like after rehearsal sometimes or whatever, it
Yeah,
was really nice because there's a there's a sense of I guess respect for certain traditions that are sometimes done in theater, like how do you prepare for a show, but
yeah,
also just all in tandem with that, the sense of life happens. Sometimes stuff just kind of happens. And
yeah,
to me, I think it's very human to accommodate both of those things and to have people be open about the fact that it's like, hey, please don't ping me within 30 minutes of the start of the show because of workflow reasons, basically.
yeah, absolutely.
And I think those are considerations that because everybody works so differently, um, a lot of people just, I mean, you can't really be aware of them unless somebody lets you know.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'd say in general with the cast composition as a whole, I really really enjoyed collaborating with everyone. And even for folks who popped back up in Midsummer, the experience was
Yeah,
so different between the two shows, um, that nothing ever felt like a retread in terms of character energy between the two sort of experiences of doing Shakespeare on the internet.
I like this. I like this a lot. Uh, okay, we have one last question. It's from Anonymous. So, for the actors that played multiple characters, Jett, we have here, how difficult was it to make each character different to the audience? And then in parentheses, they put, you all did it perfectly, leaving the audience with no doubt that we were seeing someone different.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, I think vocal choice matters, but more
Yeah.
than vocal choice, like theoretically, all three characters could sound exactly the same and look
Mm-hmm.
exactly the same and still be parsed as completely different people because, especially when you look at characterization from an outside in versus inside out perspective, they don't need to
Mm-hmm.
be fueled by you and your emotions and your experiences, which gives you a lot of creative freedom in terms of how are you piloting my meat suit like a mech. And so I think because of that, there's a lot of freedom and flexibility about what feels correct for this character and for this context.
Yeah.
Um, and then sort of after the fact, turning your regular you brain on,
Clicking
us
that back on.
yeah, just going, hey, wake up, you. Uh, how clearly are these people delineated from an observer's standpoint? And that's difficult to know without watching the footage back. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it just sort of boiled down to making sure that the presets for all of these characters were very clearly delineated, because at
Yeah.
that point it's like not even like riding a bike. It's like wearing tennis shoes versus like theater heels versus
Mm.
heeled boots. It's like you understand how to move and walk and operate in all of them, but it's just slightly different.
Yeah. Oh, what a great answer. Thank you for those of you who sent in some questions. That is winding down to our little end here. And I would like to thank everyone here who has been watching and joining us for these lovely interviews. I am Kat Alicia, and you can find me on the internet exactly that. And Jet, how about yourself? You want to let people know where
Yeah.
they can find you?
Sure. So, my handles don't match across platforms. On Twitter,
Woo!
I am at Barker Voiceover, Barker Voiceover, one word. On Twitch, I am Jett Barks, Jett Barks, like what a dog does. On TikTok, I am just my name, which is Jett Barker. And I think that's pretty much where you can find me on the internet.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Jet. It was a
Thank you
good
for
time.
having me. I had fun.
Everyone, see you later, alligators. Have a good one.
Bye.